This week, we go back to 1953. That's where Brad Walsh takes us, our resident historian at the TCA, takes us all the way back to the early 50s. Let's start in 1952, however, as the Grady Gray Knights, playing in what was known as the Atlanta City League, finished their year at 6-1-3. That was the inaugural year for their brand new head coach, a man by the name of Erk Russell. Of course, I'm talking about Erk Russell, the famous Georgia defensive coordinator on the national championship team, the beloved defensive coordinator, who of course went on to start the program at Georgia Southern and win multiple national championships. So, the Gray Knights in those days were playing in AA football, Region 3, North and South. That's what Region 3 was divided into, North and South. That was 13 teams that made up the largest classification in the state. Before I continue with the story, just some time, go back into the annals. Go to Georgia high school football history websites. Check out the difference in the teams in those old days. There were so few teams. The talent was so tightly compacted. It was absolutely amazing. Okay, I digress. That Grady team was not very deep, but the talented players that they did have were ultra talented. Like, say, All-State fullback Wilbur Lofton, Lofton, who was called by one publication as one of the hardest running single-wing runners in Georgia. He was joined in the backfield by tailback Jeff Davis, who was described as the fleetest back in the City League. Now, the City League, of course, was the term that they used, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the Atlanta City League, for all the teams that played in that Region 3, North and South. From day one, the 53 team displayed all the traits that we've come to know about legendary coach Erk Russell. They played inspired, they played tough, they played disciplined, smart football. They would plow through the regular season, as Brad says, at 8-1-1, which set them up for the city championship versus Region 3's AA South champion, Sylvan High School. There's a blast from the past for all of you old school fans out there. Sylvan High School is who they played in the championship. In front of 7,500 rain-soaked fans, the single-winged, no-face masked Grady team ran for 371 yards on Sylvan. Davis himself, 10 carries, 192 yards, while the man known as the Bull of Boulevard, Lofton, went for 14 carries and 120. Grady won the city championship 21-6, and with it, the Region 3 title. The victory earned them the right to travel all the way east to take on the Region 4 winner. I mean, all the way out to the east side where they took on Decatur. Yeah, Decatur. Again, another explanation of just how different things were in the old days. They went way out east to play Decatur. That, of course, for the North Georgia Championship. In those days, the championship, okay, you know, it was divided into North Georgia and South Georgia. On another waterlogged field and in front of 8,000 spectators, the Gray Knights broke the Bulldogs' hearts with a second half come from behind touchdown and winning the ball game 7-6 to hand Decatur their first loss at home in some 6 years. The championship game site, the overall state championship, by the way, there are still states that have championships in football that are halved, where you're a south part of the state champion or a north. Take South Carolina. A lot of you out there watching are probably some South Carolinians, or you've spent some time out there. You know, they do the upstate and the lower state championship. Okay, I digress. It's just amazing to me that some states still do that. But the championship game site for 53 was predetermined coming into the championship, that it would be held in Macon in 53. Now, this is a big deal because Grady's opponent for the 53 state championship game would be none other than the Poets of Lanier High School. Now, not the Lanier that you may suspect up in North Georgia, but Lanier from Macon, a program that, of course, is no longer around. In front of a rowdy 10,000 fans for the state championship, the two teams would face off in Macon. Lanier was absolutely loaded, at least on their starting front. They had an all-state back and future Auburn Tiger in Billy Kitchens, a name many of you know. They had all-region, all-state, and all-South lineman Will Sanders, and the biggest name of them all, future University of Georgia and Philadelphia Eagle legend Theron, the Drought Breaker Sapp, one of the great nicknames ever in the history of the world, Drought Breaker. Look that one up. I don't have time to explain it here. One of only 4 Georgia Bulldogs to have ever had his number retired, by the way. I did not know that statistic. Kudos to you, Mr. Walsh, on that statistic. The game was played on December 11th of 1953, and the headline in the December 12th version of the Atlanta Constitution read, Grady shocks Lanier, 9-6. The Grady Gray Knights, led by Erk Russell, had won the state championship. That 1953 squad fought and scraped their way into the Georgia high school football record books, immortality, if you will. Along the way, the Touchdown Club of Atlanta would name 2 of its linemen, Mike Trotter and Walter Stovall, as Linemen of the Week, and Coach Russell earned the year-end Coach of the Year award. Coach Russell, of course, would remain at Grady until 1957, boasting a 71% winning percentage over his 6-year tenure. In 58, he would depart the city for Auburn University, where, of course, he would spend the rest of his career in the college ranks. And, of course, as they always say, the rest is history. Coming up next, in the What's Next portion of our program, we actually kind of will fuse what's happening and what's next together. We'll talk about some of the happenings from last week and what that should tell us about looking forward in the GHSA spring season.